Welcome to Exploring Energy in Everyday Life. I am Rebecca and Mary.
Hi, morning.
Today we're going to be talking about trauma. And so we're going to keep it as light as possible and as empowering as possible. It's a very serious topic, but we're going to give you tips and tools and discuss how we manage with this topic. Mary?
Sure. Trauma is, yes, serious, but a crucial topic to cover. I think it's something that it's an element within individuals in our society that if we're all empowered to consciously shift and heal from our own little or big T trauma, explain what that means, then gosh, the world will be a much more harmonious place.
Yeah.
The one heavy thing I'll mention is that last week when we were recording, talking about consciousness, ironically, another tragedy took place in the USA in a Florida high school. And what came to mind to me is that people who traumatize are probably always victims. And I use the word victim only because if it's unresolved and unhealed, are kind of stuck in the victim energy of trauma, victims of trauma. And so if we can continually empower more and more people to heal their trauma, and it can be healed, and that's what we're here to tell you, that you can shift this energy, then we won't keep traumatizing each other.
Right. I'm gonna say that even calling it my trauma or our trauma can become detrimental to the psyche. It's important. I'll just reference Matt Kahn for a second. He's on YouTube. I watch him a lot, and he would say that it's not, we're supposed to be just witnessing life like we're in a movie. We're not supposed to become the movie. And if we can just step back and take the my out of it, like, oh, I saw that or I experienced that, and then it'll help remove the personalization out of it, and it'll help diffuse it or take the fire out of it. It's just one perspective. But anyway, you were saying that that trauma is or post-traumatic stress disorder is something that I don't know, what was the stats on that in the U.S.?
The latest that I read was something, I want to say the NIH estimated that there's 7.7 million Americans that they estimate have PTSD. So that would mean that they qualify for the clinical diagnosis, which means you meet a set of symptoms, enough symptoms within a syndrome that they've identified, such as re-experiencing a traumatic event, having lived through something that was particularly negatively disturbing on an emotional level, and then having it continue to impact your life, your day-to-day living. So it can be having flashbacks or nightmares. That's what we usually hear about, but it can also just be impacting day-to-day living where you have unwanted thoughts and emotions pop in, and they're related to that unresolved trauma and what happened to someone in the past.
I'm gonna throw out the perspective that yes, there's millions of people with post-traumatic stress disorder, but I frankly feel that we all carry trauma, every single one of us, maybe just not at a detectable level. Similar to cancer. Everyone has cancer in their bodies all the time. Our immune systems handle it very well, and it goes unnoticed. It's only when it becomes a certain level that we bring attention to it. So the same thing with post-traumatic stress. I know I carry trauma. I think it's part of being human. I know that, because I'm aware of even past lives, that past life issues still haunt me in this life, even though I didn't experience it. So working through that. But the point is that it's mild and it's managed. But I think we're all I think that comes as a condition of humanity, that we're all here to heal, which is, and another way of saying it, we're all here to become conscious. And part of what that journey looks like is bringing to light the unconscious and healing. So does that, just trying to give you a bigger perspective, right? Or just kind of put it all together.
Absolutely. Because going back to how people normally look at trauma, PTSD, the brain goes into a certain mode when we endure this trauma, and it's all about survival.
Right.
So, but what happens is, there's cellular memory involved. It's not just the brain, the body is involved, without going into all the detail. We know that. And then what happens is we are later triggered, or when there's something that the brain subconsciously or consciously picks up on related to associated with whatever that trauma, big T or small t, little trauma or big trauma for us. And then it sets off the amygdala, part of the limbic system. That's kind of like our smoke detector. And it signals the amygdala. And the amygdala is like a smoke alarm, and it's sniffing out dangerous situations. And so there's some perceived threat coming, even if we're thinking about something that kicks up those old associations with the unresolved trauma, then the amygdala will identify it as a potential threat, and then set off this whole cascade of events, basically setting us into fight and flight.
Right.
Where there may not be a real, a rational threat. And the brain and the body don't know the difference. And it all begins with our thinking. But like you said, Rebecca, it's about the subconscious, and where our power lies is being able to tap into that and then bring it up into consciousness, so then we can shift it.
Right. So we're not responding to a past event. So let's just elaborate on what actually happens from my perspective, and I'll just try to keep it simple. Is that when we have an unpleasant event, we tend to shut down. It's like there's a short circuit, and we're not fully present. And I'm just giving just a roundabout scenario here. And so that the actual experience doesn't actually get experienced because we've kind of blacked out. We're in survival mode. We're not fully present. We're not fully conscious, and we didn't fully experience the whole event actually at all. And so our bodies get locked. That energy gets locked in our physiology, in our brain, in our psyche, in our cells. And until the experience is fully felt, we will continue to be triggered. So the goal is to actually go back to the event. I know the sounds can be painful for some people, but keep in mind I just channeled this earlier, which this little saying that I just want to add in, that there is no emotion or feeling that will devour you, but yet not feeling it fully will. And so let's take the scary event or the traumatic event and witness it. I'm just giving people tools and perspective to not make it so big, and to take the stigma out of it and the trauma out of it. You want to actually witness it, and in your mind, see it through, experience it all over again until you get to the other side. That's what trauma is when we haven't fully experienced something. And we're here we're here as experiencers. We have to experience. That's why we're here. That's evolution is about having these experiences, kind of like the diamonds, how diamonds are made. You have to have, or, when we talk about butterflies, how they have to go through this process to become the butterfly. We have to have these experiences if we have to see it to the other side. So they're there to actually illuminate us. They're not there to keep us in the dark, but we're bringing this show to you to put it in that perspective, because they don't. If you remain a victim, then guess what? You're going to be stuck in some form of hell. And we want to bring, and we all are, we're all, on various degrees, in some form of hell. But, the goal here is to become conscious of this mechanism, so that you, the viewer, can now illuminate this issue. So you probably want to do this with a practitioner. If you've never done this before. Mary, I know we were talking about the big T and the little t. I don't know if we really clarified what that means.
Sure. Well, big T trauma, I first learned about this probably in college and studying EMDR when it was very new. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Yeah.
EMDR, a holistic modality within the psychotherapy field. Big T trauma is like the stereotypical events that people think about when it's one big thing or a series of big things that happen. Like if you're a combat veteran, if you have survived rape or some serious assault, or a natural disaster, that's like some big event. So that's like a capital T trauma. A small T trauma, we all endorse small T traumas. It could be you're in fourth grade reading a poem in front of your class and your classmates laugh at you, and then you've got trouble public speaking for the rest of your life, perhaps, if you're not aware of that. And small T trauma can also be serious, though. I mean, small T trauma might be you grew up in a alcoholic or addictive type of household, and maybe there was rage there, and maybe you didn't receive the abuse, but you were always on edge, or there was a lot of fighting, and that could be considered small T, because you can't narrow it down to one specific event. But that being said, I think where you were going with it, Rebecca, is that it's especially important to work with, if you have serious PTSD, you want to work with a practitioner who is capable, who is trained in that realm, and who is capable of helping guide you through the healing process. The small T traumas, some of them, especially once you learn some of the tools that we utilize, you can do it on you can work through some of your small T trauma on your own once you're fully equipped. And the other point I wanted to make about this, I loved how you explained that we have these experiences for a reason. We're here in life to experience things, that we need to re-experience these events and things that got stuck, that caused this stuck emotion, this stuck aspect in our cellular memory and our body and brain. However, what's nice is that these days, with some of the modalities that we work with, there are techniques that trained practitioners use, especially when you're trained in trauma. Like for me, when I went through advanced training in trauma for EFT, we learned different types of little tips and tricks and techniques to what they call almost sneak up on the trauma, and to make it.
I love that.
Yeah, and there's things in EFT called tearless trauma techniques. It's okay to cry, obviously, but sometimes you don't want to go from 0 to 100 in terms of you don't want to re-traumatize people. Right. That's my point. You actually can re-experience it without being re-traumatized.
Yes, I like that.
That's the beauty of it. And so people don't even fear it. The old paradigms, the old psychology, the old talk therapy, exposure therapy, that alone can be re-traumatizing and ineffective, far less effective than the techniques that we'll get into in much more detail next week. Emotional freedom technique in particular, and we mentioned EMDR, and there's a lot of research on these techniques, especially energy psychology. The field of energy psychology is what EFT falls under.
So yeah, maybe what I'm describing is more for the advanced speaking. But yes, when you're a newbie to healing trauma, you definitely want to work with somebody. But for your, I don't know, you mentioned eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That really needs to take place with a practitioner, and there are psychologists that are trained in that specialize in that. And then so what other modalities could we offer? We have the emotional freedom technique, which is available online with plenty of how-to videos and so forth. And then there's Nick, what's his last name?
Nick Ortner.
Okay.
He wrote a bestseller, The Tapping Solution, and has studied, and he's the one who essentially made the training that I went through possible through his Tapping Solution foundation that he created after Sandy Hook, after that tragedy, to empower and bring in trainers to train other practitioners in the area to empower us with these tools to help to then have it spread out into the communities. That reminds me, Rebecca and I were speaking earlier, that let's put it out there, the intention that that EFT be something that all schools sooner than later incorporate.
Yeah, like now, like kindergarten.
Yes, absolutely. And some schools have. Good. And some schools have, and so I can talk about that research next week. It's exciting. It makes you say, why don't we already do this? And right. That's what comes to mind about the whole PTSD piece is there are phenomenal modalities out there. People just need to know that they exist and that it's worth going through it. And it doesn't have to be years and years of therapy.
Right.
There was some research in Britain about, I want to say it was 4 sessions on average, in 4 sessions, EFT or EMDR, they looked at both, were found effective for severe clinical PTSD.
In 4 sessions, I love it, where people are suffering for decades.
Exactly.
Even, and all it is saying, look, is stepping up and saying, look, I need help, and let's do it, and let's, in 4 sessions, your whole life, you can go from hell to heaven in 4 sessions. I love it.
It's huge. It's huge because you're engaging the mind and the body and the energy system, and we're utilizing our body's naturally ability to heal. Right.
Now, notice through this whole show, we have not mentioned not one bit a medication. So I mean, we're the alternative to the conventional way of doing things for a reason, because we want to get to the root cause and to truly, truly help people evolve and heal themselves, because no one truly, truly heals from a prescription medication. And so and I'll just say for the record that for an acute situation, medications may be important. But if that's what you're depending on and relying on for the rest of your life, you're not healing.
You're staying stuck. Your system got stuck with this unpleasant event or unpleasant events, and now you're just keeping it stuck.
Now you're keeping it and you're managing it. And all your body's trying to do is bring to light this issue so that it can be resolved.
And then we can learn, right? And then we can learn from it as well. And then we have this healthy adult perspective that we bring forward and bring to light. And we're able to help others as a result. If we, whenever we get through something that's challenging, then we can be that light, and we can guide and help others.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to say that if you're watching and if you'd like to talk to me personally or email me personally, I'd be happy to help. Mary as well. We're available. If we can't help you, we'll steer you in the right direction to someone who can. And we're going to have some resources at the bottom of this video. And we're just here again to help bring to light what is, what's happening here. Keep in mind that the part of the brain that is running the show here is the hypothalamus. And I just want to point out that if someone's had severe trauma, it will almost always affect their sleep, because that gland is active at night. It's repairing, it's processing what happened that day. And if you notice that you're also not sleeping, then you certainly want to utilize take advantage of what we're talking about, because that little gland is controlling what a stressful event is and what a not stressful event is, and it needs some help. And then, so I just wanted to throw that out there. And there are supplements you can take for it. And, we could go on and on and on, and we're not going to. But anyway, I hope you've been enlightened.
Fantastic.
All right. Are we wrapping it up? What do you think?
Let's wrap it up. I think this is a natural segue. If you're watching this video and it's, let's see, today's the 21st, and we put out the following video, I hope that you immediately tune into our next video, because this is a perfect segue into the next video where we can talk about more about that sleep mechanism, how it's related to EMDR, one of the great modalities that people seek out to process trauma. Talk more about EFT next time, how to do it on your own, how to do it with a practitioner, how it works, why it works. And if you have any questions, comments, please, we welcome a discussion in the comment section below this video. And again, click on the description to read more about it and have any resource links, anything we mentioned in our discussions. We will always be mindful to try to steer you to any helpful resources. So thanks again for tuning in. Stay with us. We appreciate it.
Stay tuned for next week.
Bye for now.
Bye.